It was a cold Sunday evening in September. WHEN I received an urgent message from my friend and associate, Sherlock Holmes, asking me to come to his house immediately. He didn't say why he wanted me to come, but I presumed that he needed my assistance with a new case. So, I put on my coat and gloves and, with a mixture of curiosity and anticipation, headed off to 221 Baker Street. When I arrived, I rang the doorbell several times before Holmes's housekeeper, Mrs. Hudson, finally let me in. "Good evening, Dr. Watson," she said with a warm smile. "I'm so sorry to have kept you waiting." "That's all right, Mrs. Hudson," I said. "Is Holmes out?" "No, he's here," she replied. "He's been in his study all day, reading. He hasn't come out once, not even for lunch." I nodded. It was not uncommon for the detective to spend hours in his study researching cases. Typical Holmes, I said to myself as I made my way to the study and tapped lightly on the door. There was no response. I pushed the door open and found the detective sitting at his desk, smoking a pipe. He seemed to be deeply absorbed in a very thick book, so I sat down in the armchair opposite him and waited quietly, reading a paper. "Forgive me, Watson," said Holmes after several minutes had passed. "I don't wish to appear rude, but I've just been asked to take on a new case and I'm doing some research." "I guessed as much," I said. "What are you researching?" "The habits of dogs," he answered. "The habits of dogs," I repeated. "And what have you discovered?" "Well," said Holmes as he took a puff of his pipe, "I have come to the conclusion that a dog's character reflects that of his owners. I mean, you never see happy dogs with sad families, or sad dogs with happy families, now do you?" I shrugged. "I don't know," I said. "You may have a point, but it's hardly a proven fact." Holmes ignored my comment and closed the book. "The reason I'm telling you this, Watson, is because I think it's relevant to the case I'm investigating. What I'm trying to figure out is why Professor Presby's dog, Rory, has tried to attack him 3 times in the last few weeks." I sat back in my chair and sighed. "Is that why you called me here, Holmes?" I asked. "To discuss people's pets." Holmes smiled enigmatically. "No, not exactly. But you have to admit, it is rather strange that Professor Presby's dog, a dog he has had for years, I might add, would suddenly attack him for no reason at all." "It's really not that strange, Holmes," I said. "The dog is probably ill. And anyway, who is this Professor Presby?" "Professor Harold Presby is a well-known physiologist," Holmes replied. "He lives in Camford and lectures at the university there." "Ah, there's the doorbell. Young Mr. Bennet has arrived. I should go let him in." Holmes went to answer the door and, moments later, returned with a young man at his side. The man was about 30 years old, tall and well-dressed. He looked rather surprised to see me. "Oh, you have a visitor," he said to Holmes. "Perhaps I should come back another time, when we can talk in private." "Don't worry, Mr. Bennet," said Holmes. "Clive Watson is a trusted friend and he will be assisting me with your case." "I see," said the young man. I'm turned to look at me. "Watson, this is Trevor Bennet. He's Professor Carrotberry's assistant. He lives at the professor's house and is engaged to the professor's daughter, Edith." "How do you do?" I said as I shook his hand. "A pleasure to meet you, sir," said Bennet. "Have a seat, Mr. Bennet," said Holmes, "and I will explain to Watson why you have asked for my help." Bennet nodded and sat down on the sofa while Holmes looked through some papers.